The room smelled of beeswax, white roses, and the red wine my father had just spilled across a Persian rug. He stood between me and the front door with his phone raised, threatening to call the police. My sister Kay was behind him in a silver engagement dress, staring at the tactical vest strapped over my faded navy gown, as though I had arrived wearing a costume. "Enough, Alicia," my father said. "You already abandoned your sister's engagement party for some delivery. Now you come back with a gun, destroy the driveway, and start issuing orders in someone else's home. You need help." 20 guests watched me from beneath the crystal chandelier. Outside, the reinforced engine of my black truck idled beside 2 armored government vehicles. Inside the truck, the United States Secretary of State was waiting for me to secure the building before I moved him through the front door. My father did not know that. He thought I delivered meal prep boxes. "Put the weapon down," Gerald Whitley ordered. He was Kay's future father-in-law, a billionaire donor who spoke as though every room belonged to him. "I don't care what little fantasy you're acting out. You are on private property." I touched the earpiece beneath my hair. 30 seconds, I said. Kay laughed. A heavy vehicle door closed outside. Footsteps crossed the stone porch. The front door opened behind me, and 6 armed agents entered with the man my family had seen on television hundreds of times. Every glass in the room stopped moving, but my father still had no idea what he had started years before that night. I grew up in Millhaven, Virginia, a small town with 1 high school, 2 churches, and a diner where the waitress knew what my father wanted before he sat down. Our house stood at the end of a gravel road beneath 3 walnut trees. In summer, the kitchen curtains turned the afternoon light yellow. In winter, the pipes clicked inside the walls. My younger sister Kay was born knowing how to be admired. She smiled on command. She remembered birthdays. She understood which adults mattered and what version of herself they wanted to see. My father called her his bright one. He called me difficult. At 12, I spent 6 weeks building a model bridge for the county science fair. I used thin strips of basswood and tested every joint with fishing weights from the garage. The night before the competition, my father placed Kay's dance costume box on top of it. The center support snapped. He looked at the broken bridge, then at me. "You should have moved it somewhere safer." Kay won a ribbon that weekend. My father hung it beside the television. My rebuilt bridge won first place, but the certificate stayed rolled inside my backpack until the ink began to crack. My mother was the only person who noticed small things. She packed orange slices in my lunch because she knew I hated apples. She left the porch light on when I studied late at the library. When my father dismissed one of my achievements, she touched the inside of my wrist with 2 fingers. It was her private signal. "I see you." She was not a loud woman. She had learned to survive my father by softening every sentence before she spoke it, but when I told her I wanted to leave Millhaven and join the army, she did not ask whether I was afraid. She asked when I needed to be at the bus station. My father laughed over his coffee. "The army?" he said. "You hate being told what to do." "I hate being told I can't do it." He folded the newspaper and looked at Kay, who was filling out applications to expensive universities. "Your sister has a plan. You're running away." He was right about one thing. I was running. Not from work, not from responsibility, from the version of myself I became inside that house, the woman who entered every room already apologizing for taking up space. My mother drove me to Richmond before sunrise. Fog lay low over the fields. At the station, she handed me a small sealed envelope with my name written across the front. "Open it when you stop doubting yourself," she said. I placed it in the bottom of my duffel bag. For 20 years, I never opened it. Basic training did not make me fearless. It made fear measurable. Cold had a temperature. Distance had a number. Failure had a cause that could be studied and corrected. When my hands shook during my first weapons qualification, the instructor did not call me difficult. He adjusted my stance. "Breathe after the shot, Cooper. Not before," I learned. Years later, in Afghanistan, I stood beside a disabled convoy, while dust covered my teeth, and rounds cracked against a concrete wall. A young specialist had been trapped in the lead vehicle with a shattered leg. The radio traffic became crowded with people talking over one another. I stopped listening to the panic. I saw a drainage channel running behind the compound. I moved 2 soldiers through it, reached the vehicle from the blind side, and brought the specialist out before the fuel line ignited. Colonel David Reyes found me afterward sitting on an ammunition crate, holding pressure on the soldier's leg. My sleeves were dark with blood. "You saw the one path everyone else missed," he said. "That became the pattern of my career. I did not become valuable because I was the strongest person in the room. I became valuable because I could remain still inside chaos long enough to find the exit. I moved through intelligence, special operations support, and interagency security planning. I coordinated routes for diplomatic convoys, designed evacuation plans for embassies, and learned to read a city as if it were a living map. By 41, I was a colonel assigned as the Army's senior liaison to a State Department Protective Operations Group. My name appeared on documents my family would never see. My face did not. Secrecy made their misunderstanding easy. Kay made it permanent. When I escorted a delegation through Jordan, she told our relatives I was driving government officials between hotels. When I spent 6 months coordinating a classified evacuation network, she said I worked in international shipping. When I arrived at Christmas in an old pickup issued through a protective mobility program, my father decided I had become a contract delivery driver. I corrected him once. He looked bored. After that I stopped. My mother died while I was overseas. A storm had grounded military flights across Europe. By the time I reached Millhaven, the flowers at her funeral had begun to brown around the edges. My father met me on the porch. "You always choose the job," he said. I did not answer. He never told me whether she had asked for me. Kay said she had been too sedated to speak. I carried that uncertainty into every hotel room, every briefing, every quiet hour before dawn. The sealed envelope stayed locked in a metal case in my closet. Everything I had trained for, everything I had survived, was preparation for a room I had not entered yet. The day before Kay's engagement party, she called while I was cleaning my sidearm at the kitchen island. Gun solvent sharpened the air. The slide, spring, and barrel rested in neat order on a black mat. She appeared on my screen wearing a silk blouse and holding one hand beneath a salon dryer. "You're coming tomorrow, right?" "Yes." "And you still own that navy dress from Aunt Linda's funeral?" "I do." "Wear it. The black suits make you look severe." I glanced toward the uniform hanging inside my bedroom closet. "The dress is faded." "That's fine. It looks humble." She said the word gently, as if she were giving me a gift. Then she told me not to park my truck near the Whitley estate. Their neighborhood had standards. She suggested I leave it 6 blocks away so the guests would not think a contractor had arrived. "When people ask what you do," she continued, "just say logistics. Don't describe the boxes or the driving." Gerald's father advised presidents. "These people won't understand gig work. I'll keep it brief." She smiled. "Good, just blend in." After the call, I reassembled the pistol. Metal clicked into metal. Everything returned to its proper place. The next morning, before the party, my unit received a foreign witness at Dulles. Freezing rain moved sideways across the tarmac. I led the armored convoy through 2 security changes and delivered the witness to federal custody without incident. Colonel Reyes, now working at the Pentagon, met us at the secure hangar. "Still seeing exits nobody else sees," he said. My phone vibrated before I could answer. A message from my father asked me to stop at Costco because my truck had room for 10 cases of drinks. No question about where I had been. No question about whether I was tired. I bought the drinks. At Kay's condominium, she stood in the doorway wearing a robe and fresh nail polish while I carried every case inside. "Lift them," she warned. "Don't drag them across the hardwood." My boots had crossed burning roads and embassy courtyards. In her living room, they were only dirty. That evening, I parked where she told me and walked beneath the oak trees in the faded dress. The Whitley estate glowed behind iron gates. Valets moved luxury cars while a security guard studied my shoes and directed me toward the catering entrance. "I'm a guest," I said. He checked the list twice before allowing me inside. The house smelled expensive. White roses filled silver bowls. A jazz trio played near the staircase. The women wore soft colors and quiet diamonds. I looked like a shadow someone had forgotten to remove from the photograph. Kay gripped my elbow. "Try not to be strange." She led me to Gerald and Patricia Whitley. Patricia's eyes moved from my unstyled hair to the worn heel of my shoe. "We've heard you travel," Gerald said. "Driving deliveries across the country, is it?" "Secure logistics." Kay laughed before he could ask more. "She means packages. Alicia likes the open road. No office, no real structure." Patricia gave me a thin smile. Not everyone is suited to ambition. My father joined us with a glass of wine. For 1 second, I thought he might correct them. Instead, he shook his head. We tried to get her into community college. Nursing, bookkeeping, anything stable. She has always preferred the hard way. Kay's friends gathered around. One asked whether I kept meal kits when customers failed to answer the door. Another wondered whether delivery companies offered dental insurance. My father laughed with them. He laughed harder than anyone. Gerald placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. Society needs people like you, he said. The hands and feet. Not everyone can lead. Knowing your place is a kind of wisdom. His fingers pressed through the cheap fabric. I looked at the red wine in my father's glass. I remembered the broken bridge, the curled certificate, my mother's fingers against my wrist. I see you. I said nothing. If you have ever listened to your own family explain you to strangers as if your life were a disappointment they had learned to tolerate, you understand why silence can hurt more than shouting. Leave a comment with the words, "I know who I am." Sometimes we need to say it where someone will finally hear us. My secure phone vibrated inside my purse. One long pulse. Code red. I stepped into the hallway and answered. The Secretary of State's motorcade had been struck on Rockville Pike. The lead vehicle was disabled. The route was exposed. My armored truck was the closest hardened transport. I had 4 minutes. I crossed the reception room as Gerald lifted a spoon to begin his toast. My father stepped in front of the door. "Where are you going?" "Work. Kay is about to cut the cake." "I have to leave." He raised his voice until the music stopped. What could be so important? Did someone forget their dinner? For once in your life, choose this family over a delivery. People turned toward us. Kay's face hardened. "If you walk out now, don't come back." I studied both of them. The customer cannot wait. My father gave a bitter laugh and stepped aside. "That is why you'll always be exactly where you are." I left without my coat. The cold struck my bare arms. I ran 6 blocks in worn heels, reached the truck, and pulled the tactical vest over the navy dress. The engine came alive beneath me. 3 minutes later, hidden lights flashed behind the grill as I crossed the median onto Rockville Pike. Smoke rose above the stalled traffic. The secretary's limousine sat angled between 2 damaged vehicles, its windshield webbed with impact marks. Local officers were pushing civilians back, while protective agents formed a shield around the rear door. A patrolman moved toward me. "Ma'am, stay in your vehicle." I opened my credentials. Colonel Alicia Cooper, Federal Protective Liaison. Expand the perimeter. His hand fell away from his holster. "Yes, ma'am." The detail leader recognized me. "Cooper, we need a hard extraction." "You have one." I reached the limousine and tapped the signal against the armored glass. Secretary Thomas opened the door. His tie was loose. A secure case rested against his chest. When he saw me, his shoulders lowered. "I was told support was coming," he said. "I wasn't told it was you." "We're moving, sir." "I trust your route." Those 4 words entered a place inside me my family had never reached. I moved him into the truck under cover, drove through the breakdown lane, and assessed every nearby secure location. The extraction convoy was 10 minutes away. We needed walls, controlled access, and enough interior space to establish a temporary perimeter. The Whitley estate was 3 minutes from our position. Fate does not always arrive with justice. Sometimes it arrives with the address you just escaped. I drove through the open gate and stopped across the front steps. Valets scattered. I told the secretary to remain inside while I cleared the residence. When I entered, Kay was still telling people how unstable I had become. She stopped when she saw the vest and holstered weapon. "You have the nerve to come back? Clear the foyer." Gerald stepped forward. "This is my home. It is now a temporary federal security site." He reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police." My father blocked the doorway and ordered me to put down the gun. He said I had embarrassed them enough. He said my mother would have been ashamed to see me pretending to be important. That was the cruelest sentence he had ever spoken to me. My hand moved to the small sealed envelope inside my vest pocket. I had placed it there that morning without understanding why. After 20 years, I had finally decided I would open it when the party was over. I lowered my voice. "You should move." He did not. The front door opened. The secretary entered between armed agents. Rain shone on the shoulders of his overcoat. The room seemed to lose its temperature. Gerald's phone slipped from his hand onto the rug. "Mr. Secretary," he whispered. Secretary Thomas looked around. "My apologies for the intrusion. My motorcade was attacked. Colonel Cooper selected this residence as the nearest defensible location." My father stared at me. The secretary continued. "She commands the interagency route security cell assigned to my office. She has planned evacuations on 3 continents and brought personnel home from situations most people will never hear about." Kay's lips parted. "Colonel?" Colonel Reyes entered behind the second team. He saw me standing near the staircase in a ballistic vest over the dress, and gave one sharp nod. "There is nobody I would rather have leading an extraction," he said. That single sentence meant more than all the startled respect gathering in my family's faces. Gerald tried to recover. "We had no idea." Alicia never explained. Secretary Thomas looked at him. Professionals with her clearance do not explain themselves at cocktail parties. My father's hand began to tremble. He tucked it into his pocket. Kay looked at the truck through the open door, finally understanding that it had never carried meal kits. "We thought—" "I know," I said. "Nothing more." The extraction team secured the garden. A helicopter circled beyond the trees. I moved the secretary through the kitchen and out the rear entrance, while agents followed my commands. Minutes later, the convoy departed. The estate became quiet, except for rain tapping the windows. I stood beneath the front portico and opened the old envelope. The paper inside had softened along the folds. My mother's handwriting leaned slightly to the right. "Alicia, your father thinks strength is the ability to make a room obey him. I think strength is knowing who you are when the room refuses to see you. You notice what others miss. You protect people before they know they are in danger. You have done that since you were a little girl. There may come a day when this family makes you feel small, because your life does not look like theirs. Do not argue with them. Do not shrink for them. Go where your steadiness is needed. I am proud of the woman you are becoming. Always." "Mom," I read it twice. My father stood a few feet away. He recognized the handwriting. "She wrote that before you left?" he asked. "Yes." His face changed. Not dramatically. His shoulders simply settled, as if something inside him had finally become too heavy to hold. "I didn't know. You never asked." Kay came outside without her shoes. The rain had begun to darken the hem of her silver dress. "Alicia, we can fix this." I folded the letter along its old lines. "You didn't lose me tonight," I said. "You lost me slowly." I walked to my truck. In the months that followed, my family attempted apologies in different forms. Kay sent long messages explaining that she had only repeated what she believed. Gerald invited me to a private dinner and addressed me as Colonel in every sentence. My father left 3 voicemails that began with pride and ended with excuses. I did not punish them. I also did not return to the role they had prepared for me. Kay's engagement continued, but the photographs from that night were never posted. I heard that Gerald stopped telling the story of the strange delivery driver sister. My father became quieter at family gatherings. When people asked about me, he said I worked for the government and changed the subject. He was not destroyed. He was simply left without the daughter who had spent 41 years waiting for him to look up. One Sunday, I drove back to Millhaven and visited my mother's grave. The grass was wet enough to darken my boots. I placed the letter beneath my palm and stood there until the church bells sounded across town. For years, I believed strength meant enduring disrespect without leaving. The army taught me something different. Endurance is useful when the mission deserves you. When it does not, staying is not loyalty. It is abandonment of yourself. You do not need to reveal every medal, every scar, or every hidden victory to prove that your life has value. The people who love you should not require a public demonstration of your importance before offering basic respect. My family finally learned who I was because a powerful man walked through a door and said it aloud. But my mother had known before the rank, before the uniform, before anyone saluted. And somewhere beneath all the years of silence, I had known too. If you have ever been reduced to one small word that fits someone else's story, failure, burden, disappointment, nobody, I want you to remember this. Their description is not your identity. Tell me where you are watching from, and leave the words "I won't shrink" in the comments. Stories like mine are not rare. They are simply hidden behind ordinary doors, waiting for someone to stop apologizing and walk through.